दोस्तों गुड मॉर्निंग। बहुत अच्छा मौसम है एंड आई एम रियली इन अ excellent frame of mind, and I'm going to talk to you about some revolutionary things which have happened. आप गौर से सुनिएगा and I hope you will like what I'm going to talk. But before I say anything further, may I make a request that please subscribe to my channel, share it with your friends, and I look forward to more interaction with you. Gentlemen, the world is not static, world is moving. And it has been moving ever since the dawn of history, from the time when the great Mahabharata war was fought. Well, that was a time when war was a profession, and it has continued as the main profession of man for the next 4,000 years, considering the fact that the Mahabharata was written around 4,000 to 5,000 BC. So, gentlemen, I am going to tell you something about the latest developments, and that is concerning Ukraine. Now, the war in Ukraine, as you all know, I have brought out in so many videos before, was instigated by the Americans. They were the ones who wanted to expand NATO eastwards after the collapse of the Soviet Union, so that they could perpetuate their hegemony over the entire Europe for the next 200 years. So, despite promises by Bill Clinton, the Americans expanded NATO eastwards, and the net result was that Russia had an existentialist crisis coming in. That's what happened. But Russia was weak, and other than making some whimpering noises like a small dog, it couldn't do much. But things changed when Vladimir Putin became the president of Russia, and now we are coming to a situation where the things have changed absolutely topsy-turvy. The Russians invaded Ukraine, and as far as my latest reports go, Ukraine is on its last legs and Ukraine is ready to surrender, but the Americans don't want it. I will say the Democrats don't want it. And so they're looking for some ways and means by means of which the war can be prolonged, and at the same time the American hegemony over the world doesn't stop, and they would like to collar China, and to collar China they need India. Now, the Indian government, that is led by Narendra Modi, has played its cards very adroitly, I'll say that. Modi made a visit to Russia, and that was not liked by the Americans. Let's accept the fact. Why it was not liked? I don't have to tell you why it was not liked. It's power politics. And there was a very revealing statement made by the American ambassador to India when he said, American friendship for India should not be taken for granted. That is, the Americans not happy that Modi should have gone to Moscow and embraced Vladimir Putin. This was something which the Americans couldn't understand. But again, in America, there are two lines of thought. There's another line led by Marco Rubio, and he says, let's have an alliance with India, make India a member of NATO. But there are many in the administration, that is the Democratic administration, who want that India be total lesson. And definitely, there is the threat that the Americans had said, we'll put some sanctions on Indian banks. And if they do that, it will be very catastrophic for India, because India doesn't have the wherewithal or the military power or the internal resources like Russia, where they could face on to the American sanctions. India won't be able to do it. And after Modi came back from Moscow, probably he had some second thoughts. He was to sign a defense cooperation agreement with Russia for the use of the Russian ports and the Indian ports, which he didn't sign. And that was the clue to his thinking, because he was having some second thought, what the hell have I done? I say I'm going to antagonize the Americans. So he wanted to make some amends to that. My way of looking at the entire sequence of events that led to Modi's visit to coming visit to Ukraine is in that background. He had to assure the Americans, look, don't worry, I'm still on your side. And I'm not solely on the Russian side. Already I told you, we went to Russia, but nothing concrete came out of it. There's no defense pact signed, new, and the defense agreement of cooperation which we signed with Russia had been lying pending for so many months and years, has not been signed by Modi. This is basically as a sop to the Americans. Don't worry, I'm not entirely on the Russian side. So we had to show something better, and now he has made, or rather made a plan that he will be visiting Ukraine very shortly. Now, as far as courage is concerned, I think you can't fault Modi on that. He's got courage to go to a war-torn area like Kiev at a time when the Russians are bombing it, and but it is, some may consider it foolhardy. I don't think he's foolhardy. I think he's playing his cards close to his chest. And I wanted to show to the Americans, look, I'm not entirely on the Russian side. Even when he was meeting Putin in Moscow, he made a mention of the killing of children by in the Ukraine battle, when the Russian rockets had hit a school and about 20 odd kids had died. It's a credit to Putin that he didn't put a stop to all that talk of Modi, and it was broadcast all over the world. But at the same time, I think Modi must have realized there's a French word called déjà vu. That means it was something like victory but no victory. He went to Moscow, didn't get anything from the Russians other than some good statements here and there. He antagonized the Americans, so he had to make amends. He did try, he didn't sign any defense pacts, he didn't sign the crucial defense agreement pact with Russia on the naval ports, which would have given access to the Russians to the warm water ports of India, and India would got access to the ports of the Arctic Ocean, the Baltic, and the Baltic Sea, as well as the Black Sea, and also the Pacific. But obviously, the ports of Russia were not of much use to the Indians. The main use would have been the Indian ports to the Russians. The Americans are not happy about it, so that agreement was not signed. Now he's going to make a visit to Ukraine. Now I have a different take on that. There are many people talking it's a great statesmanship step. It's a great step forward. Modi is going to bring about peace there. And mark my words, gentlemen, I don't think anything like this is going to happen. Modi is making a visit to Ukraine. Basically, I am reminded of the novel by Alistair MacLean, which he wrote, Fear is the Key. That means what dominates a man is an inherent fear. And when Modi realized that the Americans are very unhappy with his visit to Moscow, and he already made amends, as he told, he didn't sign anything, now he wanted to show to the Americans, look, I'm not entirely on the Russian side, I'm going to visit Ukraine also, and he's talking of strategic independence. It's easy to talk. Strategic independence means you are militarily independent, which India is not. I don't have to go into details here, what is India, how India is dependent on the Americans and the Russians for everything. And let's accept one fact of world history. No power, no country became a global leader, a global power by importing weapons. I don't think that's possible. India's got the largest import of weapons in the world, I think about $70 billion. And I don't think that itself precludes the fact that India is going to be a global power. That is number one. Number two, most of the Indian equipment is coming from abroad. Even the so-called Tejas fighter, which is supposed to be our Atmanirbhar, it can't fly if you get the engines from America. I mean, what sort of Atmanirbhar it is, where if the engine doesn't come from America, the plane will not fly. And there was a good chance that the Americans would be throttling the supply of spare parts and weaponry to India after Modi's visit to Moscow. So in the background of that, he is making this visit to Ukraine. Frankly, I think this visit will not be liked much by the Democrats, by the Americans who don't want peace there. because they want the war to continue, and that I'll talk about in another video. But at the moment, it doesn't suit them that the war in Ukraine should be stopped, because the entire military economic complex of America is geared for a war. And their economy is based that way. Billions of dollars are going into the coffers of the big industrial military concerns. So you stop that war, they're going to stop. That flow to this weaponry is going to stop. So even the Western powers, the Western European powers, are pretty scared that Donald Trump will come to power. Because if he comes, I think he'll bring about peace. Modi's visit is only going to be symbolic. I don't think he's going to achieve anything, for the simple reason that the Russians are not going to agree to what Modi is going to say. That's number one. I heard one of the correspondents saying that Russia is India's friend and it will listen to Modi. I don't think so. They may be friends with India, but if Modi is going to tell them to withdraw and have peace and sign a peace treaty, I don't think Putin is going to do it. Same thing with the Americans. They are not going to accept Modi's meditation in Ukraine. So it will be a one-day visit, I think, or whatever it is, for a short time, and it will be a window dressing visit in which he'd like to show to the world, well, look, I have got strategic independence, I am going to Moscow, I'm going to Ukraine, and I can stand up to anybody. These are symbolic. Practically, I can tell you, it's very difficult for India to stand on its own, because we have got a very big lurking danger up north, and that is China. China's economy is 6 times that of India. The per capita income almost 5 to 6 times of India, with an almost comparable population, no poverty, and militarily China is a threat to America. China manufactures their own planes, they have their own space program, they have been able to send a spaceman abroad. They have a space station operating abroad. India is nowhere in that line at the moment. And India is a house divided, because here we have the Congress party, led by Rahul Gandhi, talking all sorts of nonsense, and they're not behind the Indian government, even in foreign affairs. I don't think so. And the idea is basically to undermine the Indian state by going and catching some American correspondents and British correspondents and giving negative views and reviews about India. Now that's part of the game. But now coming to Modi's visit to Ukraine, I don't think it is going to achieve anything. In fact, nothing much is going to come of it. And if it comes, I'll be pleasantly surprised. I'll be very happy. Because if Modi is able to bring peace in Ukraine, I think he would be eligible to get the Nobel Prize, something which Mahatma Gandhi had tried all his level best. I mean, even his followers, they tried their level best to get in the Nobel Peace Prize. But somehow everything went against Gandhi, particularly the massacres in Punjab, when he didn't go there at all. So that went against him and he didn't get anything, So now coming down to Modi, in case he can get about peace in Ukraine, it will be a feather in his cap. He'll be eligible to get the Nobel Peace Prize. But there's an old saying, many a slip between the cup and the lip. I don't think Modi is going to be able to bring about peace in Ukraine. I think he's trying to emulate what the Chinese did, in the sense when they brought about peace between Saudi Arabia and Iran. That's number one. And recently the Chinese had a conference where all the factions of Hamas got together in Beijing for a peace meeting, and all of them joined together. That is because China was seen as a very big power, number one, as the counterweight to America, and of course people had more trust in China than in India, because in China it's a one-man show. President Xi heads the government and what he says is final, while here in India is not the same thing. India is a parliamentary democracy, and whatever Modi says is not something going to go through, and there could be criticism about it, agitations can start in India, anything can happen. Another thing we will remember, that India has got a very sizable minority of about 20% Muslims. I don't know the exact figure, maybe 15, 16, whatever, but a fair amount of them, and they haven't integrated with the Indian society. So Modi's got a thorn in his shoe as it is. So rather, it's not so easy for him to do anything. So the background of the visit to Ukraine I've just explained to you, basically to show that, well, he is neutral, he's not against the West, and why he made it also, I've told you, the famous novel of Alistair MacLean, Fear is the Key, that's what has dominated his thinking, and he is now wondering what to do. Now looking down toward America, Joe Biden is on the way out. That's the end of Joe Biden. He's not going to reach anywhere now further. I think he'll go home, do fishing with his grandchildren. He was a good man, I'll say this much about him, but he was not a great man, and I think the health infirmities pulled him down. And that's what really mattered. He became caput because of that. Now we got Donald Trump, who's the front runner, and he's been going to be opposed by Kamala Harris. There's a lot of talk that Kamala Harris is going to do this, Kamala Harris is going to do that. She got $100 million donation from the industrial world the day she was announced as a presidential candidate, and there was some opposition to her from Obama, which is also watered down. Obama has got his own axe to grind why he did it. I think he must have carried on an assessment and realized that Kamala Harris is going to lose to Donald Trump. And if he loses, Trump becomes president for 4 years, and at the end of those 4 years, there's a good chance that Michelle Obama could be the nominee of the Democratic Party to take up the Republican challenge, because Trump would be out of the picture. He can serve only 2 terms as president, and he won't be contesting. So Obama is playing a deep game, like the loin, wait and watch. So that's what he's doing. And unfortunately, I think Kamala Harris has cooked a goose by her incompetence. It appears to me that way. And she's an Indian, but I haven't seen her make a single pro-India statement anywhere, and most of the time she talks negatively about India. That's the peculiarity of the Indians who go abroad, keep criticizing India, itself. Now Zelensky is another person who doesn't know what to do, and he's also, he must be thinking, what the hell am I going to do now? Because if Donald Trump wins the election and it's caput for Zelensky, he won't be getting the aid. I remember reading a statement by Donald Trump in which he had said, this man Zelensky, he says, is a very clever man. He comes to America, takes $60 million and goes back. Then after a few days, he says, I want another $60 million. He says, when I become president, I'm going to stop all this. So that must be the warning sign for Zelensky that the weapons are not going to come. The Ukrainian army on the verge of surrender, I think, and in case Biden loses, the Russians are going to win, and Trump may have a hand in it. Donald Trump is a maverick, but he's got very clear ideas, and I think people say that he's an impetuous man. He talks this thing, does thing, that thing, this thing, but he's got a line of thought, and the line of thought is a pro-Christian line, a pro-white line, a pro-American line. He's got that, and he's a man who doesn't believe in past history. That's very important. Past history is over and gone. And same thing has led him to say some time back that NATO is an obsolete organization. Now this is something which is rankling to the Western world, France, Poland, all these countries. What the hell? What's he talking? They don't want to become to power. And this entire concept, this entire group, I don't know. They could have done anything, and I don't know what is the reason behind the attempt on the life of Donald Trump. There was a shooting incident, and he miraculously survived. So, gentlemen, the situation in Ukraine is dependent also on who's going to win the election, and Modi is going there. I'm not very certain he's going to achieve anything. It would have been much better if Modi had stayed away from this. If he had gone to Moscow, he should have gone whole hog, signed up for the latest Soviet fighter, the Su-57. He should have signed the defense agreement with Russia and handed over the ports for usage of Russians, as well as we have a similar agreement with America. And if the Americans are thinking that they are going to pressurize India, India could make a stand. But now the Americans know the Indians are weak, and they are weak for so many reasons, and the biggest reason is China. Now, China probably, historically, would never have been an antagonist of India if it had not been for Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. In 1949, now it's talking about this long period, gives me a lot of pain, but then I must bring it out that China would never have been an Indian adversary in case Pandit Nehru had played his cards properly. When they had invaded Tibet, he should have stood by against the Chinese at that time and not allowed Tibet to go into the control of the Chinese. But he made a stupid statement in which he said he recognized the suzerainty of China over Tibet. How can he do such a stupid thing? And at the same time, he said, I recognize the autonomy of Tibet. Who the hell is going to listen to him? So all that is past, gone down the drain, but the fact is, as on date, China is your enemy number one. And we have Pakistan as the number two enemy, which is a religious enemy, religious war which they are fighting. They don't say it, but they are fighting a jihad against India. So instead of concentrating here, because you need help from the Americans against the Chinese, basically, because India can't match the Chinese in a full-scale war. And as I told you, the Atmanirbhar and all that is just hogwash. And if the supply line stops to India, it will be very difficult for India to fight. And strategically, if you see at the map, the Indians are at a disadvantage. Most of the Indian population centers are just 100 kilometers or 100 miles from the border, with the Chinese border, and India is very, very susceptible to a strategic bombing attack. So I think Modi would be wise not to antagonize into a conflict with China. At the same time, I think he should have realized that window polishing does not do anything. And his visit, in my view, to Ukraine was uncalled for, not required. And he's not going to achieve anything. I hope he does, because he's the Indian leader and I have a lot of admiration for him. But it's not so easy. And coming down to the very crucial figure which we are coming to, that is Russia, I don't know what Putin must be thinking. Putin must be feeling a little slighted. Because here's a man who comes to Russia, doesn't sign any agreement with me, gives me an embrace, or what do you call it, and now he's going to Moscow, to Ukraine. What the hell is he going to do there? He's going to make some statements. Zelensky's been making so many statements against India, left, right, and center, and now Modi is planning to go there. I don't know what is going to happen. What happens if there's an attempt to disrupt his visit? This is global politics, man. You don't know what's going to happen. There was an attempt in the life of Donald Trump also. You don't remember that Reagan also had an attempt on his life, and then John Kennedy was shot dead. And then the presidential candidate, Robert Kennedy, was also shot dead. So it's a terrible situation. Only in the totalitarian states like China and North Korea, this thing doesn't happen, because there the dictators are all defended. They got an iron curtain around them, an armament, and nothing going to happen to them. Well, gentlemen, I hope you have liked my line of thought. I differ a lot from a lot of people who have been talking that Modi's made a master stroke by going to Ukraine and all that. I don't think it's a master stroke at all. It's an attempt by him to placate the Americans. That's the only thing. And to show them that I got strategic independence, and if I go to Russia, I can go to Ukraine also. But in the bargain, I think he's going to make the Russians unhappy. They won't say so at the moment, but Vladimir Putin is a man who doesn't forget. And if Modi veers away from the beaten path, I think anything can happen. I don't want to say what's going to happen. I'm not a crystal gazer, but nothing good is going to come out of it, maybe. And it all depends on how Putin is thinking, and it also depends on who wins. And if Kamala Harris by chance comes to power, I don't think she's going to appreciate the fact that Modi went there. Donald Trump also will not appreciate, because if there has to be peace in Ukraine, the man to take credit would be Donald Trump himself. He wouldn't like Modi to take credit. Donald Trump, you remember, missed getting the Nobel Prize despite the Abraham Accord which he had negotiated with the Arab states and Israel. It was a tremendous deal, and logically, if a man for nothing could be given the Nobel Prize like Obama, Peace Prize, I don't see why Donald Trump, who did something specific, should be denied it. So Donald Trump will see to it. Donald Trump's main focus remains China, and he is also talking that the Western European powers must pay for their money. He's going to stop the military aid to Ukraine, and once he does that, I think Ukraine will collapse, and the Russians may occupy the whole of Ukraine. Maybe not the whole, but at least up to the Dnieper River they would take. And who knows what's going to happen? Russia may break away from China in that case and sort of tie up with Donald Trump. Well, gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed my line of thought. Enjoy yourself. I once again repeat, you please subscribe to my channel. Press the bell icon so that I can get more of my videos. In the meanwhile, goodbye and God bless. Take care and be a good boy. Bye-bye. Cheers till we meet again.